This video is looking at how you can use different sound effects, different sound games, in order to make your writing more detailed. Because one of the things about analysis is it works really well if we can say a lot about a little. So your first thing to do is to remember that there are all these options open to you. So you might be able to talk about a metaphor or a simile, and you might be able to talk about personification, and you might already be comfortable talking about connotations, those connections and associations of a word or an idea that a writer's used. But to give it an extra layer, sometimes you can look at how the sentence or the phrase or the image sounds in order to kind of support what you're saying. Right? So the first thing to do is to check down that list of 8 different techniques and to think, well, am I happy with all of these? Do I know about all of these? Can I start to use them? And, you know, the big thing to remember is if you spot in an assessment or a test, if you spot a kind of sound going on and you think, oh my goodness, there was a fancy word for this and I can't remember it, don't miss it out just because you can't remember the word. Okay, let's say you can't remember the word sibilance, right? You can still say in your answer that repeating the S sound creates a feeling of smoothness, or it mimics the idea of whispering, or it creates a sense of peace and tranquility, right? Really remembering the kind of technical side is the icing on the cake, right? But the big marks are always going for the effect of what you've noticed. So as I say, don't ever miss out a point because you can't remember, you know, oh, this is called assonance or this is called consonance. So if we take these kind of 8 ideas, we can then scroll down and we've got a couple of tasks, a couple of examples for practicing, right? So we can see our first example is inspired at the end by the Listener poem by Walter de la Mare, but I've kind of adapted it and added to it to add in more fl and f, to add in more fricative alliteration. So we've got the light fluttered and danced as the flames flickered through the forest's ferny floor. It's a bit like a tongue twister. And we can see that actually we're always going to do the usual thing in terms of we've got our technique. Let me just get a marker here. So we've got our technique there and we've got what it suggests. We're going to go into the effect. We're not looking at translating it or putting it in our own words or explaining it. We're trying to kind of say what atmosphere or feeling these writers' choices are conveying. Right? So the idea of the personification suggests it's gentle and graceful because it danced. Okay, so if you think of a dancer, they're gentle, they're graceful. Because the connotations, those connections and associations of the verbs fluttered and danced suggest elegance and grace. And you can see that we're trying to, you know, make sure we've got our quotation marks in to show that we've taken these from the text. And we're making it all flow as part of our own sentence. We haven't dumped a quotation at the start or dumped a quotation at the end. It's all kind of blended together. It's embedded, right? So having done, you know, what we normally do in terms of technique, evidence, kind of our analysis, we're now going to take it another step in terms of sound. So the fricative alliteration of the F conveys the idea the fire will not stay still because it's got that kind of moving around sense. And the forest's ferny floor is delicate and will be easily destroyed. And we can look at this easily destroyed. That is exactly linking it to the content of the sentence, right? We want to say, you know, why is this effective for this sentence? And it's a good way of thinking of it that if you could cut and paste, or if you could copy and paste any part of your answer into any other task answer, then you're probably being too general. Okay, so it's don't celebrate and think, oh my goodness, I've got a sentence that I can use in all of my analysis answers, because it's probably not going to get any marks because it's probably too general. Okay, so here, super specific. So what we're going to do is we're going to work through these tasks. And if I just scroll down through them, if you want to have a go by yourself, I would very much recommend you doing that. and then I'm going to go through and help you, right? So here we go. If you want to kind of pause the screen there, you can look at those, and then I'll scroll down and you've got number 5 in there. Okay. So looking at the first one, the questions you need to ask yourself. Okay, so we've got our first, like an electric shock, the fear choked him and his skin prickled. So doing the regular thing, what are our obvious techniques here? Well, you should be picking up what technique that is, right? Can fear actually choke you? You should be picking up what technique that is. And this one, it's a little bit more complicated. I think prickling describes a sensation, but it can't actually prickle, can it? I'd kind of be tempted to go for the fact that that's metaphorical, but I could live without it if you claimed it was kind of slightly more literal. But we now should have technique here, and you should be doing the kind of part of your answer saying, why is it effective to compare the effect of this fear to an electric shock? What is it about an electric shock that the writer wants you to connect to what the fear is doing to him? So is it sudden or is it gradual? Is it painful or is it comfortable? You're getting those connotations, right? After you've done that, think, okay, sound, right? And sound-wise, I would be looking up this list and thinking, right, okay, which one is best going to match this? And I've kind of picked up on the fact that I've got quite a lot of this K action going on, right? There's one, there's some more. Okay, so now I'm going to go up to this list and I'm going to think, okay, well, I think that best matches number 7. I think it's going to be consonants. I'm going to look at the context, at the content, and think, okay, well, hookah sounds kind of sharp, harsh, quick. It actually sounds like getting an electric shock, right? So I maybe want to kind of add something to my answer that says the harsh consonants of the K sound mimics or mirrors or echoes. Choose one of those. I've given you 3 alternatives. The impact and the feeling of the electric shock. So just making sure you've got those points. Looking at number 2 then. Okay, this is a wrap up after hopefully you've had your own ideas. So she stumbled as she lugged the huge box up the hill. She tugged and tugged, but it refused to cooperate. And looking at this, lugged means when you're kind of really heaving on something, right? So we know we've got a girl who's really putting a load of effort in to try and move something. And we've got, I think, personification here. We can't have a box refusing to cooperate, right? And we've certainly got the connotations of stumbling. We maybe want to talk about that. You know, is this purposeful or is this kind of, you know, all over the place? All over the place is a bit informal to put it in an essay. So think of a more formal way of saying it. We might pick up on the repetition of tugged and think, okay, what impact is the repetition having? You know, she's got to do this over and over again. We might, if we're being super fancy, pick up on the fact that we've got a bit of internal rhyme here, right? It's not just poems that can have internal rhyme. So that could reflect the kind of regularity and the repeated effort she's putting in. Once I've said all of that, I'm going to look at my sound games. So I've then noticed that maybe I've got a lot of going on in this sentence, right? Maybe there's a bit of there. And I'm going to kind of think, okay, well, that's repetition of a vowel sound. Why does kind of fit with somebody who's really trying to pull something uphill, right? You can see where this is going. I'm going to look up here. I think number 6 is the best term to match that. So I'm going to add in a little bit about how the assonance throughout this sentence could mimic or could be indicative or could suggest the effort that she's putting in. Okay. Moving down to the next one, right? We've got a short sentence, blunt, direct, harsh. Okay. This boy can hear whispers and sniggers as students hissed their poisonous words. So we know that we've got a kind of description which is kind of unpleasant. We feel sorry for this boy because it's not nice to be whispered or sniggered at. And all of a sudden, we can see that actually we've got sound effect going on here. right? And our question, whenever we get this particular repetition of an S or an SH sibilance, okay, is it to do with snakes? Is it not to do with snakes? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, right? I think here we might have a point, right? And especially because we've got a reference to poison as well. So this might be a kind of indirect reference. This might be an allusion to snakes, right? So it might be hinting, might be implying that we've got snakes involved here to make them dangerous and toxic and deadly and deceitful. These other students really aren't very nice. Think about how you're going to bring all of that together. Number 4, right? I would be asking yourself if something is punching, if something is pummeling, you know, if it's looking for a way in, what effect is that? So how is the rain described? So maybe the personification of the rain. How is it presenting the rain? Presenting the rain as friendly, is it? Presenting the rain as powerful or aggressive or relentless, right? And then I think we know where this is going. If I'm circling these, right, what are you going to say? Remember to look at the list, use the technical term, develop your answer. And then finally, number 5, she was alone. She breathed out a low moan as she looked around. And in the same way, if you recognized number 1 as being from the listeners, then you might recognize number 5 as being heavily influenced by Come On, Come Back by Stevie Smith. She sat alone on a smooth round stone, right? Here, think about, we're talking about loneliness, we're talking about moaning. You might kind of go for a little bit of onomatopoeia there. You might go for this short sentence, but you might then also start to look at this effect. Okay, and why is that? Why is that assonance particularly effective in supporting what's going on in that sentence? Okay, hopefully that helps. It's always a good thing to kind of be able to do this, because good analysis is very much about saying a lot about a little. But as with anything, it takes practice, okay? And with practicing, like playing a sport, like playing an instrument, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you mess it up a bit and have to practice it a few more times. So it is just a case of trying out what works and seeing kind of how much better you can get as time goes on and you practice more and more. Okay, good luck. Bye now.